G'day guys, I'm Matt Brand and this is the 2020 Nissan Pathfinder. Now the fourth generation Nissan Pathfinder is a big old SUV, and it really is equally a big departure away from the previous three generations, all of which were pretty competent off-roaders, but with 18 centimeters of ground clearance. Yeah, this is not that. But it still had one of the highest sales volumes of any Pathfinder, so it's doing pretty well. But with a new 2021 Pathfinder rumored to be announced sometime late next year, should you buy a Pathfinder today or wait for something better? Well, in today's in-depth review, we're gonna find out. Now, as always, we're gonna start by taking a look at the exterior of the Pathfinder, then we're gonna move on to the interior and see how it drives, and finally we're gonna end on should you buy one. And if you are new around here, please do go down there and hit the subscribe button and that notification bell, and of course, like the video too. God, that has to be one of the quickest intros I've done. Let's get straight into it. Starting with the front, and okay, yes, the Pathfinder is an outdated design, but thankfully it was never ugly, so it still looks reasonable. I like the big grille up front with a very industrial looking centerpiece thing, whatever you want to call it, and I really like the chrome that wraps around it too. It's very big and bright. The headlights are decent. There's certainly nothing special. I do like the chrome that runs through that too, but I don't know, it's just a bit boring. Thankfully, it is very functional, fully LED, so really I can't complain too much. What is disappointing though are the fog lights. They are completely halogen and they're not very bright. They don't look that great. I'm not a fan. Down the bottom is another big chrome bar, but below that is a pretty half-assed attempt at a skid plate. Of course, it's not functional. This is not really an off-roader, but you know, they could have made it a bit cooler or something. I don't know. Overall, the front is not incredible, but it does a decent job. The side is where you can really appreciate just how big the Pathfinder is. It is a long SUV. It is over 5 meters long. In fact, it's longer than a Toyota Land Cruiser. Hopefully my side shots I'm inserting here do it justice. It's big. I really like the two-tone 20-inch wheels. They suit the car well, but even they are dwarfed by the size of this car. Otherwise, there really isn't much going on with the side of the Pathfinder. It does to me just look like a big blob. There are some chrome door handles though. They're pretty cool, but that's really about it. And then the rear is just not much more exciting, to be honest. The rear taillights are about as average as they come. They're just so not special. And really everywhere else there's nothing to write home about. There's another 2 chrome bars on the back that kind of mimic the front, but even they're like, okay, whatever. Look, it's certainly not an ugly look. In fact, I like the overall design, but the elements that make it up they're really nothing special, and they do look quite outdated. Up top is the obligatory SUV roof spoiler, which does help to break up the blobby Pathfinder design. And then down the bottom, of course, is a fake skid plate, just like the front. Kind of a half-assed attempt, just like the front, but whatever. Look, overall, I think it's pretty fair to say that the Nissan Pathfinder is nothing special. It's not the ugliest car on the roads by far. It's actually a relatively decent looking car, but it's aging in its design. There is no denying that. And even with its 2017 facelift, that didn't really bring much change. So, you know, if you buy one from 2013 to 2020, they all pretty much look the same. The real challenge is that this market is totally saturated with other cars. For example, the 2020 Kia Sorento that was just released in Australia and is on sale, you can buy it now, just looks 1,000,000 times better than the Pathfinder. It's just so much more modern, and that's to be expected. It's a new design, but you know, it's disappointing. Of course, that will change with the 2021 or 2022 Pathfinder, whatever that looks like. It'll probably be better than this. But I've got an interesting question for you guys. What do you think looks better, this R52 4th gen Pathfinder, or do you prefer the looks of the R51 3rd gen Pathfinder? Honestly, I'm unconvinced. I really like the looks of the R51 Pathfinder. I don't know. I've left a voting poll in the comment section below, and I'm really curious to know what you guys think, so go down there now. Moving on to the interior, and I want to start with the overall look, layout, and feel. The interior, it extends the theme of being outdated. It's not that it's ugly in any way, it's just, it's not very exciting. It's very much out of a 2010s era design. In here, it really is just a sea of black plastics, and unfortunately most of them are pretty hard plastics. But in the places that matter, like the steering wheel and the armrest, they are nice padded leather. So I'm not gonna complain too much. What I don't like though is this design of just buttons galore right in the center here. That's not good design anymore. That was really cool. It was in fashion back around the 2010s, where the more buttons you had, the more luxury your car was. But that doesn't exist anymore. In fact, the less buttons, the better the user experience. That's what people want now. And this part here is what really, really dates the interior for me. But anyway, what the Pathfinder does really, really well is ergonomics and practicality. In terms of ergonomics, the steering wheel is electronically tilting and telescoping. It is so easy to get into a good position. Same for the seats as well. Incredibly easy to get into a good position, and it has lumbar support. It's also really bright in here. There are 2 sunroofs. You got one above the driver and passenger and one for the second and third rows, which is awesome. And visibility wise as well is very good, as you would expect from a big SUV. What the Pathfinder absolutely excels in though, even more than ergonomics, is just the practicality. Everything is really well laid out, very well thought out. There is heaps of storage spaces all across the interior. The glove box is absolutely massive. You also have like a little pocket down on the side of your footrest that you wouldn't really even notice, but it's good for maybe maps or something like that. There's also a big place to store your phone, 2 cup holders here, plus more in the doors. In fact, across the car, there are 10 cup holders. And yeah, it's really well laid out. Connectivity is great as well. You have a total of 3 12-volt sockets. You have 2 USB ports. You also have a headphone jack and also a video in jack, which again just shows the age of the car. I'm gonna floor it. Oh. Oh, I love a big V6. I love a big V6. Then there are the seats, which are just super comfy, really, really good. Made of very high quality leather. They're well bolstered while being loungers. That's the only way I can really describe them. They're really lounge chairs. They're also heated and cooled, which they use a very weird knob for it. It feels a bit cheap, but hey, at least you get it. In fact, I'm gonna turn mine on now. Then there is this steering wheel. And for all my long-term subscribers out there, you know how much I care about my steering wheels. And this steering wheel is pretty good. It is leather wrapped. It feels very nice in the hands, but it is big and it's clearly an old Nissan design. I say that because the button layout looks like it came straight out of the global recession of 2008. They're pretty nasty cheap feeling, and they're quite disparate as well, very far apart. It is quite functional though. On the left-hand side, you have your little LCD display control in the instrument cluster and also your media and phone controls. And then on the right is your cruise controls, and it does have adaptive cruise control. However, it does not have lane keep assist or lane departure warning even, which is a very big omission, and every one of its competitors will come with at least lane departure warning at this price point, and we'll get onto the price very soon, but that's kind of a theme. Moving on, and I want to discuss the instrument cluster. Now, yes, it is not a digital instrument cluster like, again, a lot of its competitors will get, especially at this price point, but it is very nice, big, bright dial, so I like that. On the left-hand side, you have the tachometer. On the right-hand side, you have the speedometer. Up top, you have a small LCD, which tries to give you a 3D effect, and it does a decent job. It shows about enough information. Really, there could be more on it, but whatever, I'll take it. At least it has something. My biggest complaint about it, though, is that there is no digital speed readout, which I really want. In a modern day car, it's something that I use all the time, and I know a lot of you guys use a digital speed readout as well, because an analog gauge is just not as accurate to your eyes as seeing the numbers displayed in front of you. But otherwise, there really isn't much to talk about. There's not much going on there. It would be nice if it was a digital display. It probably will come with the 2021/2022 Nissan Pathfinder. What I really don't want to talk about, though, to not even give it any airtime, is this infotainment system. It's just bad. Really, 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 really bad. It seriously dates the interior, so you feel like you're in a car that's not from 2020, but that's from 2004. The screen is so slow to respond. It is so convoluted with its menus. It's awful. Menus are very hard to navigate, and when you want to navigate them and you use this just awful cluster of buttons right here, it just sucks. It really, really sucks. And to be honest, I would forgive it for the fact that it has horrible graphics. I would forgive it for the fact that it's dim and hard to see in bright lights, and the fact that it's slow. I would forgive all of that if it was functional, but it's not. The only functional thing about it is it comes with navigation, which by the way is clunky and difficult to use, but it doesn't have digital radio or Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So it means you can't even bypass having to use this screen, you just have to, and it sucks. Some people have commented to me that, oh, well, I like it because it's old. It kind of gives me a retro vibe. What? That's not a feature, it's just old. It's old. You're paying more money for a bad system. Anyway, rant over. I don't recommend it. The only good thing about it is that there is a awesome Bose sound system that's connected to it. That's the only good thing about it. Everything else is just garbage and trash. Really bad. And I'm not gonna give it any more airtime. It kind of ruins the interior. And then there is the air conditioning controls, and they're functional, they work. I like them. Of course, being a big SUV, there are some rear seats. Oh, there are rear seats, of course. And honestly, rear seat passengers might have it better than the front. It is very comfortable back there. The exact same kind of very comfortable seats that are leather. The rear seats are also heated for the outboard seats. And the functionality back there is great too. You have rear zone climate control, which you can set back there. You've also got a USB-C port and a USB-A port. The USB-C port is kind of ironic because that's the most modern thing about this entire interior. But it's great, it's really good. You've also got 2 screens back there for your children to watch Peppa Pig or MattBrandCars if they're into cars. Definitely put that one on. And the headphones and remote are stored in the glove box, by the way. And in terms of how people actually fit back there, well, I'm 5'11" and I have so much legroom, so much headroom. As I said earlier, if there's one thing the Nissan does really well, it's practicality. And this is a very practical car, very spacious. The seats also recline a lot, so on longer journeys, the rear seat passengers can be very comfortable. And they slide a lot too. Ooh, also with sliding, they are some of the best seats I have ever seen for actually getting access to the 3rd row. They are so easy just to push forward. It's almost a one-handed operation. Honestly, probably the best in the industry I've come across. And then move into the 3rd row of seats, and again, you have so much space back there, plenty of legroom, plenty of headroom. With legroom, you might have to scooch the 2nd row a little bit forward, but they will still have plenty of space unless they're absolutely ginormous passengers. And you get rear air vents back there and a big Bose speaker right next to your head. But it's very practical. Speaking of practical, the boot space is also very, very good. With the 3rd row up, you have 473 liters of space, which is great. And also there is underfloor storage, although most of that is taken up by a tire inflation kit and a Bose sub or amp. I can't tell these days. They all look the same now. With the 3rd row down, it extends to 1,354 liters of boot space. And with all 3 rows down, it's 2,260 liters of boot space. Yes, this is a very big car, but you get a lot of space on the inside. Enough talking about practicality. How does the Pathfinder... How does the Pathfinder drive? You know what? It's its saving grace. The one thing that saves this Nissan Pathfinder is that it drives really well. So powering this Nissan Pathfinder is a petrol V6 3.5 litre that pumps out 202 kilowatt of power and 340 newton meters of torque. Now, unfortunately, all of that power is sent through to the front wheels on this version. You can get an all-wheel drive, but this one doesn't have its spec. And that power goes through a CVT, or continuously variable transmission, which effectively uses pulleys instead of actual gears. And yeah, it's not the preferred gearbox. Now, to be fair, this is probably the best execution of a CVT in any car I've driven. And for those of you who don't know, a CVT is not really liked because they make so much noise and they simulate gears. They don't use gears, they simulate them. And so they're often very loud, raucous. You know, they can make a lot of noise without doing much movement. But because this is such a powerful engine for this car, it works well. What's funny about the Pathfinder is that peak power of 202 kilowatt doesn't come in until now, or red line. It literally comes in at 6,400 RPM and the red line is 6,500 RPM. But honestly, when that peak power comes through, you feel like you could overtake a Toyota Supra on a racetrack. It's fast. Of course, you won't, because the 0 to 100 kilometers an hour or 0 to 62 miles per hour is around about 7.9 seconds, which is actually pretty fast for such a big behemoth of a vehicle, but it's not that impressive. But honestly, you can thank the CVT for making this car feel pretty fast because it revs pretty high, you know, a lot of the time. Now, if you have been doing your research into the Pathfinders, you would know that there has been previous instances where the CVT has been just awful and very unreliable. In fact, there was a massive class action against Nissan for this, for everything pre-2017. But after the 2017 facelift, that has now been said to have been fixed. I don't know for sure. Time will tell, but it seems like from what reports are saying, it's been fixed. And I really doubt that Nissan would want to go back through another class action. It's not a good look and it's very expensive. There are actually two driving modes as well. There's normal and there's sport with a little button on the side of the gear selector. It's a very inconspicuous button and you probably wouldn't know it turns on sport mode. I certainly didn't, but it does, and it does a decent job. It just really increases throttle response and holds the gears higher. So right now I'm just cruising along at 80 kilometers an hour. I'm sitting at 3,000 RPM. Yeah, not great. But I guess when you put your foot down, it will, you know, go. Also, as you would expect from a big behemoth of an SUV, driving along the roads is just so comfortable, it's not funny. There's a Volvo XC60 in front of me and I feel like I'm 2 times taller than he is. You just waft along and really there isn't too much body roll either. When you do take a turn, probably a bit sharper than you should. As you can imagine though, with handling, it is very wafty. I'm turning the steering wheel quite a lot right now and I'm not really moving in the lane. In fact, it's about 3 locks to each side to do a full rotation of the wheels. It's pretty poor. Not unexpected for an SUV. This is a big SUV and it feels like it. It really, really does. But honestly, I really haven't had any issues with it, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. What you might worry about though is fuel economy. Right now, I'm averaging around 11 liters per 100 kilometers with mostly urban driving, but I have seen on some days that going up with 13, 14 liters per 100 kilometers. This is a very, very thirsty engine. But what we all want to know is the Nissan Pathfinder worth it? Well, the Nissan Pathfinder starts at 48,735 Australian dollars drive away. And this one here as spec'd with the V6 front wheel drive and the white ivory paint, which is actually a pretty nice looking paint. Well, that's $69,570. Now, it does come with 7 years of warranty and 7 years of roadside assist, which is one of the best in the entire industry. And I'll put it like this, if you need a car that is incredibly practical in terms of space and function, then absolutely I can recommend the Pathfinder. It is a bit on the pricier end of the market, but you do just get such a practical car. And if you've got a big family or you have lots of friends over, probably post-COVID, then yeah, absolutely, it's a great car. And the driving dynamics, even though it has the dreaded CVT, is pretty good. But outside of the practicality and functionality, I really struggle to recommend it. And that's really because of its extremely outdated tech. Let me put this into perspective for you. The new Kia Sorento that just went on sale, as I said, that gets a substantially better infotainment system. It gets digital displays. The feel of the interior is nicer because there's so much more soft touch material. It has lane keep assist, which is a really big feature missing off of this. It also comes as standard with all-wheel drive and a diesel engine, which is a really good diesel engine. In fact, I reviewed it in my Hyundai Santa Fe review, which I'll have a link to at the end of this video. But it's not as practical on the interior. You don't get quite as much space for the third row, which for most people, they don't really use as often anyway. And that car there is about 65,000 Australian dollars for the top spec drive away. I would rather have that, I just would. And really the biggest letdown for me and for most people is the tech. It really just kind of, it brings you back to the mid-2000s, and that's not where I want to be. So to answer your question of this or the 2021 Pathfinder, well, I would probably wait for the 2021 Pathfinder. I think these will go on a big sale when those come through or are at least announced, and maybe pick one up then if it's a good value buy, but at its current price point, I would say probably wait. Anyway, click over there if you do want to see my Hyundai Santa Fe review with that diesel engine. It's a really, really good car. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you are new and hit the notification bell. Like the video, really, really helps the channel out. And comment down below what you think of the Pathfinder. Is it just a little bit old? But anyway, guys, thank you very, very much for watching, and I will see you next week.